This is my 1998 BMW 318 IS, 4-cylinder, twin-cam, 5-speed. It's done 240,000 k. When I got it about 5 years ago, the clutch slipped under absolute full power. Now it's slipping under about 90% power, so it's about time I changed the clutch. It's got the M Sport suspension, which makes it handle very nicely. It stays flat on corners, very nice to drive. It also has a dual mass flywheel, which is quite heavy, makes the motor extremely smooth, but also makes for very slow gear changes. So when I change the clutch, I'm also going to change to a one-piece lightweight flywheel. I've found with my Escort, a lightweight flywheel really does make gear changes much quicker and easier. Most of the one-piece flywheel replacements claim to be the same weight as the dual mass one, which obviously doesn't help in my aim to get a quicker gear change. I ended up making 3 videos, one on changing the clutch in your driveway using only axle stands and floor jacks, one on what's involved in going from a heavy dual mass flywheel to a lightweight flywheel, and one on doing the starter motor brushes, since I did that while I was at it. Oddly enough, I couldn't get a one-piece slightly lightened flywheel for the M44 motor, so I ended up ordering a racing flywheel from a firm in Australia. It actually came direct from a Chinese CNC machine, direct to me. And here it is. That's a racing lightweight flywheel, all right. Machined from solid stainless from the look of it. That's lightweight. Almost too much, but we'll see. It does take a slightly larger and hence possibly slightly heavier clutch than the original. Note that the dowels are adjacent to the bolt holes, and the clutch obviously needs to have them that way also, bolt hole and dowel hole adjacent, so it fits. The clutch centre plate has decent sized springs in it. Also, other than that, it's a standard B20, I think, clutch. Just for comparison, this is the original dual mass flywheel and clutch. Notice that the locating dowels are much bigger diameter and are located midway between bolt holes. And also that the driven plate does not have any cushioning springs in it. Those are built into the dual mass flywheel itself. So the two clutches are not interchangeable. So what other bits have I got? Well, the flywheel supplier suggests that the clutch pushrod may need to be lengthened or shortened, adjusted anyway to suit, since the new flywheel will be thinner than the old one. Couldn't get a spare clutch pushrod cheaply, and I don't want to go hacking into it unless I've got a backup one. So the cheapest thing to do was buy a new clutch slave cylinder with pushrod. Quite economic. The rest of the bits, new set of flywheel bolts is recommended. Those are 50mm bolts. It occurred to me if the new flywheel is much thinner, they might be a bit too long, so I've got a set of 35mm high tensile bolts as well, just in case. While the gearbox is off, it is suggested to replace the crankshaft rear oil seal. You can do that in situ, and a new seal is quite cheap. Comes complete with a guide for putting it on. Ditto for the crankshaft spigot bearing that the gearbox input shaft fits into. And while I've got the starter motor out, because it's easiest reached from underneath, they say, might as well give it a new set of brushes. It's about ready for them, I would think, by now. It's done 240,000 Ks or something. Yeah. I've also got a new little clutch release pivot bearing that fits inside the bell housing. Can't lay my hands on it at the moment, but I'll show a picture of that when I find it. Yeah, so here's our new brass one. So most of those bits are not essentials, but they're nice to haves. Might as well do it while the thing is apart. Oh no, the clutch driven plate weighs just 0.8 of a kilogram. No springs on it as expected, because the flywheel does that job. Clutch pressure plate is 4 kilograms, pretty close. The flywheel is 12.1 kilograms. Pretty massive. That's heavier than the prop shaft, and it's all weight out here. Massive inertia. Bloody hell. .2 kilograms. Clutch driven plate 1.235 kilograms. Clutch pressure plate 5.18 kilograms. Let's see now, flywheel bolts. 50mm. And flywheel thickness 34mm. So there's just 15mm bolt poking out the far end. Let's check that. Poking out the end. Thickness of this flywheel's flange is just 10.5mm. So it's going to take somewhat shorter bolts. Okay, so now we'll check the offset of the clutch thrust from the back of the flywheel to see if we need to change the length of the clutch pushrod at all. So that one is 87 millimeters. Yeah. I've bolted them down so the clutch is fully compressed. £72 millimeters. Yeah, so it looks like I'm going to have to change the clutch pushrod a bit. We'll just check the depth of the crankshaft flange bolt holes. Yeah, 21mm. I'll check them all off camera. Well, they all came out between 21 and 22mm. Well, I've got some new 35mm bolts here. It's going to be way too long, I think. Yeah, definitely sticking out the back 24mm when it should be 16. About 8mm too much. This has a flange thickness of 10mm. So 10mm and 16mm is 26mm. So we just cut this off very carefully to 26mm. Just there. There we are. Close enough, within a millimetre. 7 more to go. Okay, there we are, 26mm long thread length each. The new clutch plate is 232mm diameter compared with 216 on the old clutch. So this is what the flywheel supplier says about the clutch pushrod length. So I'm going to have to measure up where the clutch slave cylinder sits, clearance to the clutch release lever, and work out if I need to lengthen the clutch pushrod, and if so, by how much. So this is my new slave cylinder and pushrod. I'm going to reuse this rather than making an all new one, because this is 7mm diameter. It fits into some sort of rubbery thing in there. If I make a new one of 6 or 8mm, it won't fit so well, and I want to keep this hard black rubbery end on it as well. So I'll just have to cut this, weld in another 15mm length there, and I hope I can do it neatly enough. Fortunately, dead straightness doesn't matter. Pushrod can waggle about a bit, so if I don't get it perfect, as long as it's about the right diameter and structurally adequate, should be okay. The challenge will be welding this without overheating and burning the rubber plastic end on there. So first I cut this off about here. Now, the success of this exercise will all depend on how accurately I have set this up. So that's part way done it. Now this goes on there somewhere, so I'll cut this off to length and weld that on. Now we want 104 millimeters. Yeah, 105 will do. It's not like my calculations were that precise. I've decided to gas weld this joint rather than arc weld it, since my gas welding is much neater. And just to prevent overheating this rubber end on it, I'm going to try water cooling it with the garden hose. We'll see how well that works in a minute. That should do it. Well, the water cooling absolutely worked. This end never even got hot. There we are. 106 mil long, actually. I was aiming at 104. 2 mil shouldn't make a big difference if I got my measurements anything near right. Tolerance should be a lot more than that. And it's reasonably straight. So, should work. Okay, so this has, 76 mil. Fully out. Fully compressed. 43 mil. So that's 33 mil travel. When I fit it, comes up snug at, oops, there we go. I'll just measure it. 28 mil it was. That means it's got another 5 mil travel before fully compressed, so that should be okay. Well, that did make a difference. Not as much as you'd expect looking at the two flywheels side by side, but then the new clutch is a kilo heavier and the crankshaft is unchanged, so it's a reduction in rotating inertia, but not as much as one might expect. She does feel a little bit more lively in the low gears, and the gear change now feels normal, where before it felt a little bit slow. So there's some improvement. And of course the clutch no longer slips on full throttle, which was the main reason for changing it anyway. So overall it was worthwhile doing the swap, and cheaper than buying a new dual mass flywheel, which is what they recommend. So yeah, worth it. Would I go from a standard flywheel to a lightweight flywheel again? Absolutely.